Everyone always thinks I was running that day, so that's the common misconception. I was eating chocolate-covered pretzels wondering why anyone runs 26.2 miles. But it was incredible, and I had never been to a marathon like that before where people trained so hard, and we had gone to the 17-mile marker, and we had these homemade signs, and my 5-year-old son was with me that day, and so I remember him holding up his sign and being so excited, and we were tracking our runner on our phone. And one of the people in our group of about 9 decided, hey, we needed to make our way closer to the finish line so we could actually see our friend cross. And so we went down to the finish. We were right there in the middle of the action. And Noah, my son, began to get very, very bored because there's only so many runners he can watch pass at 5 years old. Yes. And so I told him, I said, Noah, why don't you sit down on my feet and play in the rocks like you're a scientist? And his back was against my shins, and that's exactly where he was when a bomb in a backpack went off 3 feet behind us.
3 feet, so you were close to the epicenter of everything.
We were, yes.
I know that you were so stunned, obviously. When you came to, tell me what you saw or what you were thinking.
I remember everything that day because we never lost consciousness. So we were blown forward and my body was pinned to the ground. My bones were laying next to me on the sidewalk. I couldn't see my legs because I was in a pool of my own blood. There were nails and BBs and ball bearings, and everything that these 2 brothers packed into these pressure cooker bombs went within everyone's bodies. And I just remember laying back and saying, God, if this is it for me, take me, but let me know that my little boy is okay, because I was convinced I would die on the street that day.
You were dealing with extreme blood loss, incredible trauma, and you did think you were dying, and I can think every mom watching this, every parent watching this could imagine that moment, like, where's my son?
Yes. That's all I wanted to know. I didn't care what happened to me. I just wanted him to be all right. And I actually saw him out of my peripheral vision, and I could see that he was injured. He had a cut to his bone on his right leg, but nowhere to the extent that I was. And so it was amazing, though, because I feel like God revealed himself even then in that chaos and that terror. He eased my mind because I knew that Noah was going to make it out of there.
Your legs, which took the brunt of everything, were actually the thing that saved your son's life.
I still can't believe it, and I would go back and do it again in a heartbeat if that meant saving my little boy, but there were angels all around us, and God has a bigger plan for both of our lives, because had Noah been standing up like he was supposed to be, he would have died just within the impact of the bomb.
Wow. So you think that you're probably going to die, but help comes to you, and all these people are heroically trying to save your life. When did you know, okay, I think I might survive this? How long did that take?
I'm not even sure if I knew that with the whole scene, and I just remember so many people stepping in to help us, not knowing if a 3rd bomb or a 4th bomb or a 5th was going to go off, and those were the heroes that day, people that were just, there, and they, even with all of the evil surrounding us, there were still God's Samaritans and angels everywhere else. And so I remember being loaded onto an ambulance and someone screaming, "We have an amputee," and I knew if I did make it, that life as I knew it was completely over.
And that reality of the amputee didn't happen right away. You were having surgeries every 2 days.
I was, yeah. Every other day I was in and out of surgery with just all of the shrapnel and the metal in our bodies. It caused so much damage, and so my left hand was extremely damaged. I almost lost it. My right leg and my left leg far more severe. And so I spent 56 days initially in the hospital with surgeries, and then a year and a half of more surgery with them trying to save my left leg.
That's an incredible effort that they just would not give up on your leg. And how did you finally make the decision, you know what? This isn't going to work. I'm going to have to do something more extreme.
To me, I thought it was like a bad boyfriend and I needed to get it out of my life right away. And that's what I kind of joked. And I even wrote it a breakup letter and I gave it a farewell going away dinner party. And from the beginning, I knew that my leg wasn't my leg anymore. And I was just thankful to be alive. And the first words that I actually wrote, because I couldn't talk, I was in a medically induced coma. And when I came out of it, I had tubes down my throat and my mom was there. And she gave me a piece of paper and I wrote with my right hand, "God is not finished with me yet. There were angels all around us." And so to me, my leg didn't matter. My little boy was okay, I was okay, and our lives were spared for a bigger purpose.
And you were not just dealing with the physical trauma, but the mental and emotional trauma. You realized once you came out of all the medication,
Yes.
post-traumatic stress disorder started bubbling up. Tell me about that.
It's such a real thing because of everything that we saw and experienced, and the emotional part sometimes far outweighs the physical part. It's, leaving my house, it's big crowds, unattended bags at the airport, loud noises. There are many days where I get up and I have to give myself a pep talk to say, okay, Rebekah, no one's going to try to kill you today. You need to go ahead and go to the grocery store, run your errands. And that's just the life that I've come to know after terrorism became a part of it.
You ended up having a very public marriage. Your boyfriend at the time was new. He was injured as well. And so when he proposed to you, it became a big, beautiful media thing that probably everyone watched. And it seemed like the fairy tale ending in a sense, but it wasn't.
It was, yeah. Everyone wanted it to be so much more than it was, and I wanted it to be so much more. But when you have things, you go through things like that, you realize who's there for you and who's not. And you also realize that your plans are not necessarily God's plans. And so I was following my own path, trying to get through life kind of on my own, and that's when I realized, hey, this is not good. And just like my leg, I had to let that part go, and it was so humiliating and embarrassing because it was so public. But as soon as I did that, God really opened up so many doors for me, and he showed me that's what I needed to do all along.
I so feel for you because, you spent a year and a half fighting to save your leg, finally made the tough decision to amputate. 2 days later, you find out that he's been cheating on you by something you get in the mail. And there you are, single mom now again. You're dealing with the amputation and all of that recovery and the trauma of the bombing and now a divorce and the publicity of that. And of course, people are not always so kind on the internet to you. How did you get through those days?
That letter really saved my life. Whoever wrote it, I will be forever indebted to them. But I remember going to a therapist office and sitting down with a lady and saying, what am I doing wrong? What is going on that I keep attracting people like this? And it stemmed back from my childhood, where I had an abusive father growing up who was an evangelist, who traveled all over the world preaching, was said to be the next Billy Graham, and he came home and abused me and my mom. And so from a young age, I was told I wasn't good enough, and that was kind of the message that I carried throughout my life, and I had no idea the impact that it would make on me in my relationships as an adult. But once again, God just brought me through that, and I'm in such a beautiful chapter now, and his plans are so much greater than ours.
You reconnected with a wonderful man after this that you had known in university, and you had to move away, so
Yes.
you never really finished that relationship, and you fell in love.
It was my old college boyfriend of all things. I was 18 years old, and I had to move away because my sister had heart surgery, and I needed to move back home to be with her. And we had not seen each other in 10 years, and over a dinner that he had been to because he was out of town, he was on a business trip in Houston from Kentucky, we met up because that's where I live, and through Facebook of all things, I said, hey, we should get dinner while you're here. And it was like that week we realized that nothing had changed between us, only that we were older and more mature, and we had lived, and we got married on a beach in Jamaica 5 months later.
I wanted to ask you about your relationship with God because, it wasn't always easy. And I think when people suffer, they just see that, like you proclaim faith and it's very real to you and it's real to you now, but there were some dark moments. How did you work through all of that and find God in the midst of this?
There are still dark moments, and I think that everyone's life is a mess. Whether or not we tell people about it is a different story, but these are just my obstacles, and mine aren't any greater than anyone else's. And everyone has life blow up in their face, whether it's a literal bomb or just a figurative one. And so by me exposing my toughest struggles and showing the places where God wasn't necessarily I thought was prevalent, when he really was. He was trying so hard to show me, and I was just backing away because of my childhood and all of the things that I witnessed from that. It's important because when you look at my story, there's so many different miracles, and there's so many times where I shouldn't have made it through. 6 months before Boston even, I was held up in a Walmart parking lot and robbed at gunpoint. So there's been so many different times, but God is still so much more powerful than all of it.
And I think it's so great that you share about your dad, because I think a lot of people have problems with God because of what people have done. Yeah. People who represent him, that we don't always represent him well. We're running out of time. But I want to get to the bomber. So the FBI asked you to testify in court against him. And so tell me about seeing him for the first time and having to tell your story right in front of him, like feet away from him.
A week after my amputation, the FBI comes into my hospital room and says, oh, by the way, you've got to testify in the trial of the remaining bomber. And so life is never boring, right? And I didn't want to do it at the time, but it was something that I'm so glad that I did do, because it was closing a chapter of my life. And when I was in the courtroom, I didn't want him to gain any more satisfaction based on what he had done. And so I gave my testimony, but the coolest part was that I was also asked to give a victim impact statement. And I got to go back and I looked at him right in the eye, and I stood stronger than I've ever stood before. And that was all God, because that was definitely not me. And I said, in order to give a victim impact statement today, I'd have to be someone's victim. And I'm definitely not yours, and I'm definitely not your brother's. And I went on to say that there are that many more people ready to do the work in getting rid of evil once and for all, and I'm one of them. And this is just my small way of making a difference. And I feel like God's given me an incredible platform in order to do that. And I feel so blessed every day of my life.